Hello, and welcome. Welcome once again to the Secrets of the High Demand Coach podcast. And here with us today is what I would say is the definition of a high demand coach. With us today is the one and only Jim Schleckser, who is founder and CEO of the CEO Project, a renowned executive coaching company specializing in high revenue entrepreneurs. Jim offers a distinctive CEO coaching program that combines peer group discussions with personalized one-on-one coaching sessions led by former CEOs. He advocates for the lazy CEO, emphasizing efficient delegation and time management as essential traits for successful leadership. Jim also hosts the Lazy CEO podcast, a successful podcast focusing on entrepreneurship and CEO leadership, providing valuable insights to a broad audience. He's here with us today. Jim, so most CEOs that I know they're very, very busy, very industrious people. I'd go so far as to say they pride themselves on that, right? I'm so busy is like some kind of badge of honor. Yet you think CEOs should be lazy. Why is that?
Well, there's this myth that busy equals good, right? And I think we all got trained this our whole life. Like, who was the last car to leave the parking lot? And I was that guy, trust me. I mean, I took pride in the fact that I was the last car out of the parking lot when I was trying to grow my career. We carry that into being a CEO. And, the confusion is that activity and progress are not connected. And so lots of activity doesn't mean progress. And as a CEO, we're responsible for the progress of our company. So the idea is, how do we spend time on the few things that can actually drive progress? And we actually don't have to be as busy as everybody thinks we do. In fact, I would interview CEOs and one question, how many hours a week do you work? They said 80. I go, we got a little problem on our hands. So yeah, activity and progress are not related. And I'm trying to help people understand that.
So good. So what would you say if it's not just about being busy, then what we have to do is we have to be really clear on what we need to do. So what would you say is the most important job of a CEO? What's that one thing they all need to do?
Yeah, well, there are two, unfortunately, sorry. But, one of the things we talk about in my book, Great CEOs Are Lazy, is this idea of a point of constraint, a kink in the hose. Mm-hmm. And you can imagine a garden hose, you're trying to get water out. You can do work anywhere on that hose, but the only productive work is to find the kink and open it up. Well, the same thing's true in your business. Somewhere there's a kink in your business, something that's stopping you from getting you where you'd like to get, revenue, profits, whatever. Your job as a CEO is find the kink and open it up. And really, you do that consistently, you'll get amazing results. And the good ones do it, even though they don't say it the way I'm saying it to you. That's what the good CEOs are actually doing.
Yeah. In your book, you have this really fun phrase. You call it peanut buttering. What is peanut buttering, and why do so many CEOs do it?
I blame the MBA programs, and I have one, so I can say this, right? We get taught about this idea of stakeholders when we're running companies. The employees are stakeholders, and the customers, and the community, and the environment, and my supply chain, and all stakeholders in my business at some level. So I got this. 10% to employees, 10% to shareholders, 10% to, and I just evenly spread my time across the business. We call that peanut buttering, or spreading like peanut butter on a piece of bread, your time. The problem is that is essentially a formula to never do anything interesting. The way to get something interesting done is to maldistribute your time, pile it all up, sort of 18 red, pile it all up on one and go for it hard and make sure you win. There's a saying that goes, people talk about putting your eggs in many baskets. This is a strategy of put your eggs in one basket, but then really take care of the basket.
Yes. I love that, particularly for founder entrepreneurs, because a lot of them, especially if they're influenced by that kind of MBA type approach, it's just like, it just kind of bottles them up, like make them small, make them average. Yeah. And then they die slowly or quickly, in that, right? They just, and they think, so the real tragedy of that is they think, well, if that's what being a CEO is, I guess I'm not CEO material. When in fact, I've found that some of them are the very best at doing what you've described, right? They're doing interesting things, right? Things that actually move the needle and change it. So there's a set of concepts, a framework that you lay out in the book of these different hats, 5 hats that lazy CEOs wear. Yep. Now, being that I am the head of a company called Scale Architects, I just could not let the architect hat
You
go.
like one of the hats better than the others.
Yeah, there's a slight bias, but hey, I run the show, so I get to do that. We'll kind of introduce the other hat so we don't leave everyone hanging. We'll show you how you can get more about that. But I want to know, what is the architect hat, and why, or maybe even better yet, when should CEOs wear it?
Yeah. So the concepts are there are multiple hats a CEO wears, and all of the ones in the book are high value use of your time. One of those hats is the architect hat. And the architect hat is when you're dealing with your business model. And I have to say, it is impossible, almost impossible, to overcome a bad business model. So the more time you spend designing a really elegant, refined business model, meaning what we do for whom, what my target market is, what my price, my margin, my level of recurring revenue, how much assets I need to run this business. If you do all that really well, you actually don't need to be the brightest CEO in the world, because you've got such wind at your back because your business model is so strong. You know, I can give the example, you know, Netflix, when they first came out and they were offering CDs when they were competing against Blockbuster, I'm like, I didn't have to be the brightest CEO in the world. Once I came up with that business model, I just had to go, right? Compare that to trying to run a coal mine. Like, oh boy, you know, environmental issues and safety issues and price fluctuations and no recurring revenue. And like, I'm not smart enough to run a coal mine. So you imagine, like, good business model, bad business model. It just makes your life easier. So if what you're doing is not, let's say, doesn't have flow, isn't easy, isn't delivering the results, time at the business model with the architect hat on, you know, designing your business is really high value and really useful work.
Yeah. So I've got a couple questions around this idea of a business model. The first one is, what would you say are some of the attributes of a great business model? You've kind of, you know, compared and contrasted them a little bit. What do the great ones tend to have in common?
Yeah. So, and I did touch on them, but number one, with a bullet, all-time winner, retired the trophy, recurring revenue.
Yeah.
High degrees of recurring revenue it's just a better business. And imagine you have two businesses, one with essentially no recurring revenue and one with. On January 1st, I wake up in my no recurring revenue business and I'm at zero. So let's say last year I did $10 million. I got to go find $10 million of new business and deliver it just to stay even with last year.
Yes.
Compare that to a business. I did 10 million last year and I have 90% recurrence in my business, which is not atypical. All I need to do is go find $1 million of new business, and I begin to grow at that point. It's easier to budget. It's easier to grow. It's easier to forecast. And frankly, when it comes time to sell the business, businesses with high degrees of recurring revenue are worth far more money than businesses without high degrees of recurring revenue. So that's number one. Number two would be margin. High margin is better than low margin. I know that's kind of obvious, but we see a lot of people struggling with, 10, 15, 20% gross margins. And you have no freedom of action when you need that much, you have that little profit in the business.
Yeah.
40, 50, 60%. Now we're really at 90. Now we're talking. And then maybe the third would be low degree of capital intensity, meaning it doesn't take a lot of capital to run your business. The negative example is we worked with a CEO that had a steel distribution business, very sophisticated steel. So when somebody wanted to order $20 million of steel, he had to go place an order for, and he had low margin too, $15 million of steel, which he had to front the money. Well, guess what? He was constantly at the bank borrowing money to fund inventory. It was just a horrible business model. And compare that to software, digital download kind of stuff, 90% margin, no assets involved or limited, way better business, business, easier to grow, easier to scale.
Yeah. Some really, really compelling reasons around why business models are so important. What I have found, though, this kind of goes back to your kink in the hose analogy, but a lot of entrepreneurs think about building a business, but they don't really take that next step and think about building a business model. Why do you think that is?
And I think it's a natural evolution. If a company is going to grow, in the beginning, we throw talent at the problem, ours or other people. We'll just hire somebody, right? And what you find is you have to hire superhuman individuals with incredible commitment, and you expect heroic efforts to be successful. Well, that works up to a certain level. And at some point you go, geez, I can't, and you're there when you or I are talking to a CEO and they go, I just can't find somebody who has a level of commitment and understanding. And I'm like, when they write the job spec, I'm like, my God, do they have a cape and do they fly around? Right?
The horn, a single horn coming out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Purple unicorns. And go at that point, you have to build a system that allows normal human beings to do the job and do it reasonably well. Look at the ultimate example is McDonald's. I talk about it in the book, but they hire, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids who don't have a lot of commitment to the program. And yet they deliver those hamburgers and those fries exactly the same everywhere you go around the planet because it is a massively perfected system. The great book here is E-Myth by Michael Gerber, E-Myth Revisited. It talks about working in the business or building a system that can actually scale. And you must run into this all the time, Scott, because without a system, without a systematized approach, you will stop scaling at some point. You just can't get there with talent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's one of the big things that scalability hinges on, at least in my experience. Jim, there are 4 other hats. I'm wondering if you could just introduce them for us so that folks can get an idea of what these high-value activities are for CEOs.
Okay, so this is bonus material. It's not in the book, but when you're trying to find the kink, you either go into learner or analyst hat, where you're trying to analyze data and so forth, or player hat, where you actually go in and do the process, like go make sales calls. You will figure out where your point of constraint is really quickly. Once you know where it is, there's 3 hats to fix the kink: architect, which we talked about, change your business model; coach, talent, either coach up your talent, replace your talent, recruit new talent, all in that category; or engineer, which is what we just talked about, is build processes and systems that can deliver quality all the time and delight customers. So those are the 5 hats: 2 for finding the kink or the point of constraint, and 3 for fixing it.
That's fantastic. Where can folks get a copy of the book? Give us the title one more time, where we can get a copy of it.
Yep, it's called Great CEOs Are Lazy, and you can find it on Amazon. It's available digital or hard copy, or you can listen to my dulcet tones if you want to, and I do the audiobook as well.
That's fantastic. It is a very, very good book. Had a chance to read it here getting ready for this episode, and it's top shelf. It really genuinely is. Anyone who's in that CEO role, getting ready for that CEO role, I highly, highly recommend it. Before I let you go, Jim, I've got one more question for you, and that is one that I ask all my guests. What would you say is the biggest secret that you wish wasn't a secret at all? What's that one thing you wish everybody watching or listening today knew?
Well, I'm going to give you 2, unfortunately. One was this concept that busyness does not equal activity. And that myth, so many people believe it, and it's just not true. But the other one is correlation and causation. I see people make this mistake all the time. They go, well, this happened and that happened. They're correlated. Therefore, one caused the other. And I go, no, they happen at the same time, so they're correlated, but one didn't cause the other. The example is, did you realize that 95% of people that have car accidents drank water within the prior 24 hours? And you go, well, and we do that all the time in business. That kind of statistic, we go, well, I guess we shouldn't drink water anymore. Right? And it's just not true. It's not causal. So causation and correlation are different, and you need to be really clear because people make that mistake all the time.
Yeah. Yes. Jim, you've got a number of CEOs that you guys help out in peer groups and other platforms. Someone's out there listening today. They want help. They don't want to do the CEO thing alone. How can they reach out, find more about the work that you guys do at CEO Project?
Yeah, we work with both CEOs and some succession candidates, actually, who are sort of just about ready for that job. You can find out more at theceoproject.com. And you can find everything you want. If you want to talk to us, just fill out the form. We're also on all the social media you could care to mention. So we're out there pretty strongly.
Fantastic. Well, Jim, thanks so much for being on the show. Really a privilege and honor having you here. Again, fantastic book. I love it. Can't recommend it highly enough. So thanks for putting that together. For those of you watching and listening today, your time and attention mean the world to us. I hope you got as much out of this conversation as I know I did, and I cannot wait to see you next time. Take care.